have a egg stuffing party. We've got some new bags this year for our egg hunt. New bags. New bags. See our new bags? But in order for kids to be able to fill the bags up like this, these can't be empty like they are right now. And here's the good news is we're starting early this year. And there's no hope that we'll ever be able to pack all the eggs next week. We're just going to work from 10 until 2, I think is what the thing says. Is that what it said? Am I right? Somebody going to tell me? No? Okay. So we're just going to pack for a few hours, then we're going to go home. There's no hope that we'll get all of it done. There's no pressure to get it all done in 1 week because we'll just come back and we'll do it some more. But don't worry about that. We just want you to come and bring something to eat, and we'll sit around and we'll have a good time, and we'll be gluttons together, and it'll be beautiful. But I'm really excited about the egg hunt. I don't know if you guys have been here before for that. If you've missed it, you've missed craziness. This building being full of people being outside everywhere. Last year we had over 600 people that were here for our egg hunt. That is just absolutely amazing. And this year it's probably going to be even larger just because more and more people hear about it and more people come. Really the only way that we advertised last year was in the giveaway, and we advertised on Facebook. In the Facebook event last year, by the time that it started, there were 106 people that said they were coming. And now a month out, we've already got half that many people that say they're coming, which means by the day of the event that we're going to be way over what it was last year, which means we're going to have a lot of people here. So what that also means is we're going to need your help. But get this, everybody, that we don't have any prize lines this year. Like last year, all the stress of all the kids standing in line waiting for little prizes, not going to happen this year. So that's a beautiful thing. I know we need some people to paint faces still, right? We need some people to be able to come and paint faces. I offered, all I can do is circles and stick men. And I could probably do a cross. I got that down pretty pat, but that's all I could do. So if you have any artistic ability at all, see Mandy, and she will love to write your name down on a piece of paper that says that you're going to come and paint faces with us. It's going to be awesome. But this morning we're going to continue in this series that I've entitled The Prodigal, as we look at this story of what is commonly referred to as the prodigal son, right? And what we're doing is we've been taking time to look at each of the characters in the story. And 2 weeks ago, we looked at the younger son. And what we looked at is what caused him to leave away from home. What really happened was he was there with his father, and he had this idea that he could do everything better than his father. That he could have his life worked out in a much better way, that everything that his father had for him, all the blessings that his father had for him wasn't good enough. So he took everything that was his and he said, you know what? I've got this. I'm on my own. And then last week we looked at the older son and we looked at how he was always with the father. He had always been there. He had always stood by his side. He had never done anything wrong, and he allowed that goodness that he thought in himself to be his biggest downfall. Because he used it to compare himself to everyone else. He used it to compare himself to his brother who he thought was less than him. But today I want to take a moment to just look at the Father. I want to take some time to look at the Father. Let's look at Luke 15:20. It says this, so he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. And then verse 28, it says, the older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. And then one other verse, Luke 13:34 says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you. How often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. If we look at these texts together, if we look at these scriptures together, what you're going to see is you're going to see a different side of God. See, when we think of God as God the Father. We think of him in all of his masculinity and all of his sternness and all of his strength. But if we really look at these verses, we're going to see what you might call the feminine side of God. The feminine side of God, this loving, caring, nurturing side of God. And if we're being honest, we should all realize that God really isn't male, right? He's not male, he's not female. He is above that in some way that we can't even begin to understand, because the Bible says that he created them both in his image. I can't even begin to understand what that's like. But they describe him in the Bible as his father, and that's the way it should be. But he also has those feminine qualities. So let's get to the basics of this. Really, what most scholars believe is that God was referred to as the Father just because it was a completely patriarchal society. And if you look at it, if you were to think about it, if Jesus were to come to earth, if he were to come to earth in the form of a female, no one would have ever followed him. Especially in the time period that he was in, because women had no power. They would have just looked down upon him. But we look at the Father because not only that is that Jesus said he was born of the Holy Spirit through the Father and through Mary, his mother. So we realize that God is Father, and that is good. But somehow in our culture, we have came to decide that masculinity is all that a man is supposed to be. We have given this idea that the true place of a man is to be firm, to be stern, and there's no feminine side to us at all. We're not supposed to be the nurturer. And I really believe that's become a problem in our society. Men aren't supposed to cry. We're not supposed to nurture our children, and I believe there are tons and tons of problems with this. If you look closely at the painting of the prodigal son, I think it's back there. If you look closely at the painting, if you look at his hands, you can see that the father's hands are different. The father's hands are different from each other, and they're really, really different. You probably can't see it from your seat, but if you look at them closely, they are very, very different. See, the father's left hand on the son's shoulder looks very masculine. You can see the veins in his hands. You can see them pointing out. You can almost see as if he is reaching down and grabbing tightly onto his son's shoulder. But if you look at the other hand, it looks more feminine. It's soft. It's there on his shoulder. It's more refined. It's tender. The fingers on the right hand are closer together. They have more elegance to them. And it just lies softly on his shoulder. And Henry Nouwen said this about the right hand. He said it's as if it is there to caress, to stroke, and to offer consolation. It's the soft hand. But let's look back to the text I read to you earlier. It says this, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you are not willing." How many of you have ever seen a hen with her chicks? How many of you have ever seen a chick with her hen? I said that backwards, but that's okay. You know what I'm trying to say, right? It's a really cool thing, right? It's a really cool thing because they'll get up under the mother's wings and she'll be wrapping it around there and they're safe up under there, and every once in a while underneath that protection they'll stick their little head out and look around to see what's going on, but they know at any time they can draw their head back in and be safe. And what Jesus is saying is he's saying, I want to do that to you. And to me that's an amazing visual. He's saying, I want to wrap my arms around you. I want to hold you. I want to comfort you. I want to protect you in that same exact way. But see, that's not the way that we think the Father's supposed to be. That's not the way that we think a father is supposed to be. He's not supposed to be that loving. He's not supposed to be that soft and that comforting. That's not how society tells us that men are supposed to be. But here we see it as Jesus is saying he's wanting to hold you. He wants to protect you. He wants to caress you. And if you look at this painting, it's almost as if his cloak is around his son. It's coming around him to protect him. He's saying, here you are. I am with you. It's really great imagery, but for some reason our society has failed us. We have failed men. We have failed them to be nurturing and tender. But the truth of the matter is, as most of us as fathers, we can be tender and nurturing with our daughters, right? We can be tender and nurturing with our daughters, but if our son were to fall, it's, dude, get up. Quit crying. Put some dirt on it. What is wrong with you? We forget to be that way with our sons. And we're raising them to be hard. We're raising them to be tough because they're not supposed to cry. They're not supposed to be that way. And really, it speaks to me. It really speaks to me when I think about this, and when I think about my sons and I think about Karis. It's a really different mindset that we've got ourselves in, and we've ruined our culture that way. But something is truly wrong with us as fathers when we miss out on half of what God has called us to be. Something is truly wrong with us as fathers when we miss out on half of what God is, the loving side of God, the nurturing side of God, that protective, I'll be there, I'll caress you in all of your deepest worries. Something is wrong with us when we've missed out on that. But the truth of the matter is there's a great balance between the two. There's a great balance between that loving, nurturing side and that tough, stern side, and we have to find as men how we can be both of those at the same time. And the thing about it is we as a society are raising, and let me take that back, women are raising an entire generation of men by themselves because men have walked away. Men have walked away from their children and they're letting women raise their kids by themselves, and there are so many men that aren't learning how to be men. But they are learning the loving and nurturing side of a woman. That's why some of those men even raised or be even better than some other men, because they learn how to be tender, they learn how to be soft. But don't get me wrong. There's something wrong with us when we miss out on that nurturing side, and there's something also wrong with us when that's all we are as men. Because we are called to be both. And see, the truth of the matter is when we only see God as feminine or see God as masculine, it would be really easy to miss out on some critical understandings of who God is. And when we see God in this way, we can see him as the caring, loving, and nurturing God of this painting. Just as a mother would gather her young, wayward child in her arms and caress it, we see the Father in this painting doing the same exact thing to his son that's run away. And the truth of the matter is when we start to see the depths of God's love, when we start to see him for who he really is, we just don't understand it. We don't understand how God could love us. We don't understand it. We struggle to accept God's love for us because we see ourselves the way that we see ourselves. We see all of our faults, we see all of our misgivings, and we say, how could God ever love me for all the things that I've done wrong? And we get really hard to accept God's love. And we don't understand how even other people around us can love us. How could they love me after all the things I've done wrong? How can my wife still love me after all the stupid things I've done? And we find it hard to accept love from other people. And the truth of the matter is we tend to think of God at a distance, right? We tend to think of God as he's this person, he's this holy being at a distance. He comes around and he pats you on the back and he's like, oh, that's a good job, you're doing pretty good. Or he pats you on the butt, he's like, oh, you're doing great today. But he's just at a distance. He's just loving us at a distance, just keeping us at arm's reach. We don't tend to think of him as pulling us into his chest and embracing us and holding us and loving us closely. Because we don't understand how he could ever do that. Because we know how holy he is. We know how just he is, but we don't understand how he could ever get by with all the things that we've done wrong. So we struggle to see him as who he really is, affectionate, caring, loving us deeply more than anyone could ever imagine. We fail to see that how he's depicted in this picture as overly loving, as compassionate. It's important, though, that we realize through this story of the prodigal and even through this painting how much God longs for you. How much he longs for you, no matter how far away you've been, how much the Father longs for you. He cares for you deeply, more deeply than anyone that you could ever imagine. And for some of us, you've been running from God for a really long time. You've been running from God for a really long time. You've really got this idea of how your life's supposed to be, and you thought you had it figured out, and so you ran away like the younger son. You're like, I've got this. Or you look at yourself and you're like, God could never love me. I've done so many things wrong. So you've been keeping him as far away from you as you possibly could. You just are like, I can't go home. With all the things that I've done wrong, I can't go back to God. So you've been keeping him at an arm's distance for as long as you can. And there's a time to let it go. It's time to just let all of that go and just go back home. And at the end of the service, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm going to give you the opportunity to come back to Jesus, to turn your life around and walk back to him, because I want to make you sure you know that right from the start. I'm going to give you that opportunity to turn your life around, because if I believe that there is a decision that we can make, if I truly believe that there's a decision in this life that we can make that would change eternity, and I didn't do something to give you the opportunity to turn your life around, what kind of person would I be? Men, let me tell you something this morning. It's time for you to come off that high horse and being so stern and strong and thinking that everything has to be that way. Men, it's time to realize that you can hug another man and not be a homosexual. Right? Just because you hug another man doesn't make you a homosexual. You can do it. It's time to get down and love your kids, love your boys the same way you love your girls. It's time to open up your heart. Quit being so hard-hearted. It doesn't make you any less of a man. Jesus, the greatest man that ever lived, was very caring and affectionate. It doesn't make you a wuss. It just makes you compassionate like the Father. And the next thing that we need to abolish is this idea that God is hard to get to. See, we come up with this idea and we make these things up in our head that God is really far off in the distance. That God is hard to get to, that he's made all these rules, that he's set all these things up, that I can't get to God. That I can't get to him anymore because he's put himself so far away. He's set up so many rules that God doesn't want me there. But the truth of the matter is that God is exactly where you left him when you thought you could do it all on your own. God is exactly where you left him when you said, you know what? I've got this all figured out. I've got my life figured out on my own. I can figure this thing out. I can do it. God is exactly where you left him when you made that decision. He's exactly where you left him. I've found through reading books and through in college that the one problem in relationships that most people have is this idea of how people should love them, right? The one thing that comes into problem in most relationships is the idea of how we think people should love us. We think people should love us in a certain way, like you have to love me like this. This is how you show me your love. While at the same time, we act in a way that makes it almost impossible for people to love us that way. So we demand the person love us. Hey, you got to love me. You've got to love me. And then when the person does, we don't even notice it. Then when our partner does, we don't even notice it. Or we don't act the way like we should. We don't respond in the way that we should. Or we say, you know, it doesn't seem like you really love me. But really, they're showing you love and we don't see it because it's not the way we think it should be. It's not the way that I've learned to accept love. Or people start asking for love and they start serving us and they start doing things for us and we don't realize that that's an act of love. For instance, it's like if Jennifer were to make me lunch and the whole time she's making me lunch, all she can think about is how much she loves me. She's just doing it because she loves me so much and she just wants to make me happy. And she brings me my plate and sets it down and I'm just too busy to even acknowledge her. She just gives it to me and it's there and I'm just too busy to acknowledge what's going on. I just keep going about my business. And it hurts. It hurts her because that's what she's done to show me that she loves me. And I'm not thinking anything about it because that's not the way that I've decided that I'm going to accept love because it's totally different from the way I need to accept it. But that's what she's trying to show me. And then later, I want to talk to her and she's enthralled with what she's doing and I get upset because she doesn't respond immediately. And we're going back and forth through the same thing. Because we don't understand. Because we're thinking people need to accept love the way that we want to accept love. And it makes everything different. And the truth of the matter is this. We are all so evident of the millions and millions of ways that people don't love us. But we find it hard to see the billions of ways that they do. We're so easy and we're so able to say, hey, you didn't love me this way. You didn't do it this way. This is the way I wanted it. You didn't love me this way. But all the ways that they're trying to show us our love, we just ignore. And seems to be a vicious cycle that we get ourselves caught up in. And we go over it over and over again. Well, I'm trying to love you like this and you're not accepting it. You're trying to love me like this and I'm not accepting it because we don't see it. And it's this vicious cycle. It's this vicious thing that comes between our relationships. And the thing of the matter is if we're doing this with the people that are here in front of us, what makes us think that that's not exactly what we're doing with God? We're doing the exact same thing with Him. He's showing us love in ways that we're not willing to accept. He's showing us His love for us in ways that's not really how I accept love, so I'm not going to say that means that you love me. So we don't see it. And really the only difference in this between us and other people and God and us is that God isn't doing the same thing to us that we do to Him or do to other people. God doesn't love us the same way that humans love other people. God doesn't love us the same way that we as humans love Him. God doesn't love imperfectly. God doesn't love intermittently. He doesn't just love us now and then, and maybe right now I'm going to love you for a little while, but you're going to do something that's going to make me really mad, so I'm going to quit loving you for a little while, and I'll love you again later. God isn't impatient with His love. God isn't like that. He's not like us. God doesn't love begrudgingly. He doesn't hold grudges. Oh, that last time I wanted you to do something, you didn't do it. And now I'm mad and I'm not going to love you. And now I'm upset and I just can't love you the way I used to because you really hurt me. God isn't like that. God doesn't love us partially. He doesn't love us with just half of His heart. He loves us with everything that He is. And the truth is that we have great scriptural support for the idea that the way we love others is the exact way that we love God. See, the way that you love other people, the way you receive love from other people is the exact way that you love God, the exact way that you receive love from God. Just look with me at Matthew 25. It says this in verse 37, "Then the righteous will answer Him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And the king will answer and say to them, "Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, you did it to me." And then 1 John 4:20 says, "If anyone says, I love God, yet hates his brother, he's a liar. For anyone who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen." See, this is deeper and truer than most people understand. This is a deep, deep understanding. If you're feeling unloved and unappreciated by God, then maybe one of the things that you can do is learn to see the people around you loving you. Like if you feel unloved and unappreciated by God, then one of the things that you can do is start realizing the people around you are trying to love you. Look at the way the people around you are appreciating you. They're trying to show you their love. And then you will start to see that through God. Or maybe you're starting to feel condemned by God. You don't realize how He could ever let you go from the things that you've done. You just think God is on you all the time. He just wants to hold you down. Maybe that's the way you feel. Well, maybe the thing that you can do is learn to accept words of grace and compassion and forgiveness from people around you. Maybe you can start to see that. Maybe you can start to allow people to forgive you. Maybe you can understand that in the people around you. And then you will start to see that in God as well. Because I guarantee you, if you're feeling condemned by God, then some of that stems because you won't let people forgive you. You won't accept that forgiveness from anyone else. It's hard to see that in God if you're not seeing it in other people. Or maybe you're feeling abandoned by God. Like He's left you all alone. Like there's no way God could ever be there for you with everything that's going on in your life. How could God possibly be around you? Well, if that's you, then maybe what you need to do is learn to see the efforts of people around you making themselves to be available to you. Maybe you should see the people around you that are coming to your help, that are coming to your need when you're in your lowest points. Maybe those are the exact people that God has sent you to be his voice. Or maybe you're feeling alienated from God. Maybe you're feeling alienated from God, like you just can't get there. Like he's on this totally different planet. Like there's no way that you can connect with him. Well, then maybe what you need to do is learn to connect with the people around you. Learn to connect and plug in with the people around you. Learn to build those relationships and tie yourself in with the people that you can see on a daily basis. And then maybe you'll start to feel closer. Maybe like connection will come back. And it's not because learning one of these helps you to do the other, but because they're the same thing. They're all in the same thing. As you did unto others, you did unto me. Of course, the main way that we can see this love reciprocated through God, maybe the easiest way that we can learn that is through our marriages. Look at the way you love your spouse. Look at the way you love your spouse, and look at the way that you actually allow and receive love from your spouse. And that's the way that you receive love from God. However you receive love from your spouse, that's the way you're allowing God into your life. However you give love to your spouse, that's the way you're loving God. If you're having difficulties allowing your spouse to love you, if you're having difficulties loving your spouse, then you're probably having the same difficulties allowing God to love you. You're probably having the same difficulty loving God. So there stands the older son who's feeling no love at all from his father. He's unable to accept the gracious compassion that the Father wants to freely give. In fact, he's already pouring out that grace and compassion on the younger son. Many of us are like that. Many of us are like that. We believe that God can love, that God can pour his compassion, that God can pour his blessings and his heart out on everybody else. But for some reason, we have a hard time believing that God can pour his love and his compassion out on us. So we stand there like the older son and we watch God pour it out on everyone else. Not realizing the whole time that the Father is waiting to give it to us. Stand with me this morning. See, one of the symptoms of our brokenness, one of the symptoms of the fall is our inability to know that we are loved, our inability to know that we are chosen by a gracious and loving Father. This morning, I invite you to come and fall at his feet and allow the love of the Father to pour into every area of your life. Allow the love of the Father to wash over every part of who you are. Bow your head with me this morning. Father, we are so grateful for you. Father, I am thankful for your love. Father, I ask for your forgiveness for all the places I've messed it up. For the places I've messed it up with my wife, for the places I've messed it up with my children, for the places I've messed it up with those people that I come in contact with. Father, I pray that you would help me to love more. Father, I pray that you would help me to love like you do, compassionately, with a tender heart, holding no grudges. Father, this morning, I just pray for each and every one of us here that you would make yourself known to us, that your love would wash over each and every one of us, that you would just pour your Spirit out upon us this morning. Father, I pray that this morning, when we begin to worship in a few moments, Father, that people would be able to step into a new revelation of you, that people would start to worship so freely because they love you more than anything in this room. They love you more than anything in this world, and all they want to do is worship you for all the love that you've given them. Father, I pray that today would be a day of first. Father, I pray for those this morning that you've called to dance in front of your throne. Father, I pray that you would break down their inhibitions. Father, I pray for those of this morning that you've given a word to speak to your congregation, Lord, that they would no longer hold their tongues. Lord, this morning we just declare our love for you. And with every head still bowed, with every eye still closed, if you're here this morning and you realize that you've been running for far too long, that you've been running away from the Father, that you think you thought you had it all figured out, and now you found yourself really far away, and you just don't even realize how God could ever possibly love you. But you're ready to go back home. You're ready to go back and fall at his feet and allow him to pour his love and his blessings and his mercy out upon you. And you're ready to turn the keys of your life over to him. If that's you this morning, would you just raise your hand? Nobody's looking around. You just say, Jesus, I give my life to you. Church, this morning as they begin to play and as we begin to enter into a time of worship, I just want to ask that you would just quit thinking about everyone around you. This altar is open, that you could come and you could receive his love and his blessings upon your life this morning. All that stuff that you've been carrying, all those hurts, it comes from walking away from the Father. Come back to him this morning. Come back to him and kneel at his feet and allow him to pour into your life. Worship him in the way that he created you to this morning. Jesus, we just thank you for today. Father, as we enter this time of worship, Father, I pray you move upon this place. Father, I pray that our worship this morning would shake the walls. Father, I pray that our worship this morning would touch the heart of heaven. Lord, I love you. We love you. We are so grateful for you this morning. It's in Jesus' mighty name we pray.